What if Bigfoot isn't just a myth? What if it's out there, watching us, waiting? I never believed in the stories they told about Bigfoot. But what happened that night in the Cascades, I still can't explain. We were just a few friends, hiking, having fun, thinking we were the only ones in the woods. But the moment the growl echoed through the trees, everything changed. I'll never forget the look on my friend's face when we heard it, frozen, pale, like he knew something we didn't. And when the shadows moved, that was the last time I felt safe. But here's the real question. If Bigfoot was hunting us, what would you have done? Tonight, we're diving into true Bigfoot horror stories that actually happened. So stick close and keep watching till the end to find out what happened, before it was too late. But before we start, make sure to subscribe or follow so you never miss any new chilling releases. If you're enjoying the content, hit like, drop a comment, and share this video. Let's see how many of you truly love this kind of episodes. But there's a little twist. One of the stories you're about to hear isn't real. It was completely made up. Watch till the end, try to guess which one, and leave your guess in the comments. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. And now, let's dive into the darkness together. The ascent to the Rocky Mountains was grueling, but none of us cared. We were more excited than anything, eager to be far from the distractions of civilization, just the five of us and the untamed wilderness. The air smelled fresh with pine, crisp and invigorating, and the sky stretched wide and clear above us, so vivid that it felt like you could almost touch the clouds. I looked over at Kyle, who had a grin on his face that could only be compared to a kid on Christmas morning. We were all buzzing with excitement. The thrill of being out here, with nothing but nature surrounding us, felt like freedom. Matt, always ahead of the pack, led the way. His voice carried back to us, talking about the best hunting spots, pointing out deer tracks in the dirt. We were making good time, and by the time we set up camp, the sun was dipping low, casting the mountain peaks in shades of gold and orange. The fire we built crackled and popped, sending sparks into the cool air. Soon, we were all laughing around the fire, roasting marshmallows, talking aimlessly about nothing and everything. It felt perfect, like everything had aligned for this moment. The wind whispered through the trees, and the distant calls of wildlife added a tranquil backdrop to our little circle of warmth. It was peaceful, and for a fleeting moment it felt like we were the only people left in the world. But then, the night began to settle in, and that's when we heard it. A growl. It wasn't like anything I'd ever heard before. Low and guttural, a mix between a bear's growl and something far darker. My eyes flicked to Kyle, and I saw the unease creeping into his expression. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Doug just shrugged, his usual confident demeanor unchanged. "Probably just a bear," he said dismissively. But something in his voice didn't convince me, and from the look on Kyle's face, I could tell he wasn't so sure either. Then it came again, closer this time, louder, like it was circling us. It sent a shiver down my spine. Trevor squinted into the darkness, trying to see past the flickering firelight, but he didn't say anything. The silence stretched out, and I think we were all waiting for someone to admit that there was something more out there. But no one did. The fire, once comforting, felt colder now. The darkness around us was deeper, thicker, pressing in. Eventually, we retreated to our tents, but sleep didn't come easily. Every rustle of leaves, every crack of a twig, felt amplified in the silence. The growl echoed in my mind, a reminder that something was out there with us. By morning, we set out again, but the forest felt different. There was an eerie stillness, a lack of the usual bird songs or the hum of insects. Trevor claimed he saw something, just a shadow, but big and moving between the trees. He laughed it off, but the way his eyes darted around the woods told a different story. That night, the unease had only grown. Even without speaking, we all felt it, The fire didn't seem as bright, and the shadows stretched far too long. The air felt thick, like the forest was alive and watching us. And then, it came again. The growl, but this time it was so close that it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Kyle went pale, and Doug, who had always been the bravado of our group, gripped his rifle tightly. The fear was in all of us now. Then, the crash from the trees, and there it was, a massive figure, just at the edge of the firelight, covered in dark fur, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. We froze. For a moment, it seemed unreal, like something out of a nightmare, too big and too horrifying to exist. But then, it let out a roar that shook the ground beneath us. I saw the others scrambling, grabbing their gear, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed with fear. Kyle screamed as the creature lunged for him, and I watched in helpless horror as it dragged him into the darkness. The scream stopped abruptly, and the silence that followed was even worse than the roar. Matt snapped me out of my daze, grabbing my arm. "We have to move. Now." I nodded, my mouth dry. We grabbed what we could, running through the forest, a blur of shadows and terror. The sound of the creature's footsteps crashing through the underbrush was close. Too close. We ran until my lungs burned and my legs were ready to give out, but we didn't stop. We couldn't. At the base of a steep hill, we half slid, half ran down, the creature's roars echoing behind us. We kept moving, barely able to think beyond survival. By the time the sun was starting to rise, we were still running, driven by nothing but pure adrenaline. Our legs felt like they were made of lead, each step a struggle, but we kept going. Matt kept telling us we were close, that we just needed to push through, but I wasn't sure he knew where we were anymore. The creature was still there, its growls low and menacing in the distance. It was toying with us. And then finally, we saw it, the edge of the forest. The sky was lighter here, a faint blue that promised safety. But the creature wasn't done with us. I heard a crash behind us, closer than ever, and when I glanced back, I saw it. A massive, dark shape moving between the trees, its glowing eyes locked on us. The roar filled the air, and I knew we weren't out of danger yet. But the truck was so close. We made it. Barely. Matt fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking, but we made it into the truck just as the creature emerged from the trees. It was even bigger in the daylight, its fur matted and its eyes burning with fury. We sped away, kicking up dust, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over. As we left the forest behind, I glanced back one last time. The creature was standing there, watching us, its eyes locked on ours, even as the forest swallowed it up again. We had survived, but at what cost? I'm 62 now, and I've seen my fair share of things in my time. My mother and grandmother were Cree, and I grew up hearing stories passed down from our people. One of the most important, or maybe the most chilling, was the story of the Wendigo. My mom always warned me about it, how it was more than just a creature, but a force of nature that could twist the soul of any man who wandered too deep into the wild. She would remind me to always be cautious, to stay aware, especially when we ventured into the wilderness. I remember when I came of age and decided to join the Canadian Armed Forces. My parents drove me to the gates of the base, my mom smiling at me with pride, though I could see the worry behind her eyes. Before I left, she gave me one last piece of advice. "I'm proud of you, son. You'll do well. But remember, watch for the Wendigo when you're out in the wild." I thought it was just a story, something my mom told me to keep me in line. But as I grew older, I couldn't shake the unease I felt whenever I heard the tales. After basic training, I was sent on a tradesman course and then to my first posting. I was assigned to the Special Service Forces in Padua, Ontario, as a communications specialist. My job was to fix telecommunication equipment, and because of the sensitive nature of the work, I had a top-secret security clearance. We trained hard, preparing for everything. Nothing could have prepared me for what happened during a winter warfare exercise, though. One cold December, we were flown by helicopter to a mountaintop near Algonquin Provincial Park for a week of training. The temperature was around minus 30 degrees Celsius, a biting cold that made every breath feel like ice in your lungs. Part of the training included guard duty, and one night, while I was on watch, something strange happened. It was around 2 a.m. The camp was quiet, the others deep in sleep inside their tents, but I began hearing voices, soft, indistinct voices echoing from somewhere down the mountain. At first, I figured it was just the wind, but the more I listened, the clearer it became. They sounded like people talking, but not in any language I could recognize. It almost sounded Asian. The voices came from different directions, as if they were spread out in the forest, having some kind of conversation. I checked the camp. Everyone was accounted for, huddled in their tents, fast asleep. With a growing sense of unease, I pulled out my military flashlight and scanned the area. Nothing. I called out into the cold, my voice loud and firm, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. "Hello? Who goes there? You're on a Canadian Armed Forces base. Identify yourself." Silence. I kept walking around, trying to spot anything that might explain the voices, but the forest remained still. It was too cold for anyone to be out there, especially at that time of night. The voices kept up for what felt like hours. Finally, I snapped and fixed a bayonet onto my weapon. It wasn't the best option, but without ammo, it was all I had. I kept my eyes peeled, walking around the perimeter of the camp, the sound of those voices swirling around me. Then, just like that, the voices stopped. I was left standing in the dark, shivering, wondering who would be foolish enough to hike 20 miles into the wilderness in such brutal conditions just to mess with us. The next day, my replacement showed up, and the first thing he asked was why I had the bayonet fixed. I didn't want to tell him about the voices, so I came up with a weak excuse about doing some drill movements to stay warm. He didn't seem to buy it, but he didn't press the matter. A month later, we were out in Wayne Rye, Alberta, for another military exercise. The entire brigade was there. One day, I was out on a call with a partner, trying to fix some equipment deep in the snow. We had been driving for nearly an hour in the thick of it, unable to find the damn thing. My partner was looking at a map, and I was trying to figure out where we were when something caught my eye. In the open field, about 100 feet from the tree line, I saw a white-tailed buck foraging in the snow. The deer was looking right at us, and then, without warning, something huge exploded from the trees. The creature moved faster than anything I'd ever seen. It was like a blur of reddish-brown fur, huge shoulders, and a body so muscular it looked like it could rip a tree out of the ground. The head was pointed, set directly on the shoulders with no visible neck, and its arms, long and muscled, hung by its sides. The legs were thick, almost like barrels, and covered in long hair. The beast closed the distance to the deer in seconds. Before I could even warn my partner, it grabbed the deer by the head with one hand, twisted it like it was nothing, and then threw the lifeless body over its shoulder. The creature didn't stop, didn't hesitate. It just turned and vanished back into the trees. I didn't know what to say. My heart was pounding. We weren't supposed to be out there on some wildlife watch, and whatever that thing was, it wasn't anything I'd ever seen. I put the truck in gear and told my partner, "Let's get out of here." We found the equipment and went back to camp, but the whole time I couldn't shake what I had witnessed. When we got back, my sergeant asked if everything had gone okay. I told him I wasn't sure what I had seen, but it was pretty freaky. He just waved it off, saying he didn't want to hear about it. As time went on and I grew older, I realized what I had seen that day was something I couldn't explain. It wasn't just a strange animal or some lost creature. It was a Sasquatch, and it had hunted that deer like it was nothing. I served in the army for many years, went on missions, and saw a lot of strange things in far-off places. But nothing, not even the most bizarre situations I encountered, could compare to what I saw in the wilds of Alberta. That beast, with its glowing eyes and massive body, will never leave me. And I'll never forget that deer it carried away, like it was nothing more than a rag doll. The Wendigo my mother spoke of, that's something far darker. But what I saw in those woods, it was primal, terrifying, and I'll never forget it. It was 2004, the year I retired from my long service as a forest ranger in the Pacific Northwest. I had spent over 30 years working in the woods, maintaining trails, monitoring wildlife, and making sure the forests were safe for hikers and hunters. I'd seen a lot in my time, from peaceful mornings with the mist rising from the rivers, to nights so silent that the very trees seemed to hold their breath. But there was always something about the forest, the way it seemed to breathe, the way it felt like there were things watching you, hidden in the dark. And then there was Dave. Dave was my hunting partner for over a decade. We'd spent countless hours in the wilderness, tracking deer, elk, and even the occasional bear. We knew the woods like the backs of our hands, and had never been afraid of what lay out there until that one trip. It was late fall, and we decided to go deeper into the Cascades than we'd ever been before. A part of me was uneasy, but I pushed it aside. This was going to be the hunt of a lifetime, I thought. We'd catch the big one, the elusive buck that everyone whispered about. Dave was more excited than I had ever seen him, and that excitement was contagious. We set off early in the morning, hauling our gear deep into a part of the forest that only the most experienced hunters dared to venture into. By the time we set up camp, the sun had dipped low behind the jagged peaks, casting long, ghostly shadows across the snow. The air was colder than we'd expected, and the wind picked up, cutting through our layers like knives. It was a perfect night for hunting, silent, still, and dark. We set up our tents at the edge of a small ridge, a place that overlooked the valley below. Around us, the trees were ancient, twisted, their bark blackened from years of wind and ice. The ground was hard, frozen beneath our boots as we unpacked and prepared for the night ahead. The fire we lit crackled against the cold, the warmth of it offering some comfort as we settled down to eat. There was something strange about that night, though. The air felt too still. The usual sounds of the forest, the rustling of animals, the chirps of distant birds were absent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. I glanced at Dave, and he was staring at the forest, a faraway look in his eyes. I didn't say anything, but I could feel it too. That sense of being watched. It wasn't long before the first noise came. Something out in the distance, deep in the woods. A crack of a branch, maybe a rustle of leaves. At first, I thought it was just a deer or a small animal moving through the underbrush. But then it came again. And this time, it was followed by a low, guttural growl. I froze. Dave didn't seem to hear it at first, but when the growl came a second time, his face turned pale. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. His voice was tight, strained. I nodded slowly, my heart beginning to race. It wasn't an animal. Not any animal I knew, at least. It was something deeper, something darker. "What was it?" Dave asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't sure. Maybe a bear, or something big. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't. Bears didn't make sounds like that. This was something else. I grabbed my rifle, just to be safe, and decided to go take a look. I crept quietly through the trees, moving away from the camp, my eyes scanning the darkness. I didn't know what I was expecting to find, but the hair on the back of my neck stood up. Every little snap of a twig or rustling of leaves made me jump. I didn't see anything at first, but then, through the trees, I saw it. A shape. Moving slowly, almost deliberately. The figure was tall, taller than any man I had ever seen. The silhouette was broad, massive even, its shoulders wide and its body hunched. The figure was moving in the shadows, just out of the firelight, but I could see it well enough. It was walking on two legs, but with a strange, almost inhuman gait. Its arms hung unnaturally low, swinging with every step. For a moment, I thought I had seen a bear standing on its hind legs. But the more I looked, the more I realized it wasn't any animal I knew. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't a man. I turned and glanced back at Dave, who was standing by the fire, his eyes wide. He had seen it too. There was no doubt. "What the hell is that?" he whispered. The creature stopped moving. It was standing at the edge of the trees, almost as if it had sensed us watching. I could feel its gaze, though I couldn't see its eyes. It was too far into the shadows. But there was something in the air. A heaviness. A suffocating weight. It was watching us. Waiting. We didn't move. We didn't speak. We just stood there, frozen, watching the shape in the trees. Then, after what felt like hours, the creature turned and began to walk away, moving back into the dense forest. Neither of us said a word. We didn't even dare to breathe for a few moments. I don't know how long we stood there, but eventually, we packed up everything. Our gear, our tents, and we left. The next morning, when the sun rose, we found the tracks. I had seen animal tracks in the snow many times before, deer, elk, even moose. But these tracks were something else entirely. They were large, huge, even, much bigger than a bear's paw print. The snow around them was disturbed, as though something heavy had been moving through the forest. The footprints were human-like in shape, but too large to belong to any man. They led into the woods, and they circled our camp. It was as if the creature had been watching us all night. We didn't talk about what happened to anyone. Dave and I didn't even speak to each other much on the way out. The tracks remained on my mind, though, gnawing at me as we hiked back. I couldn't explain what I had seen, what we had heard. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't a man. It wasn't anything I had ever encountered in my career as a ranger. I don't know what it was, but I know what I saw. Dave moved away shortly after that trip, and we lost touch. He never came back to the forest. He never hunted with me again. But I can't blame him. After what we saw, I didn't go into those woods again either. Now, years later, I've thought a lot about it. What if I had stayed? What if we had followed those tracks deeper into the forest? But then again, maybe it's better I didn't. Maybe some things are better left unexplored. If you've made it to the end of this video, let me know in the comments which story creeped you out the most, and if you could survive only one of them, which one would it be? Don't forget to drop your guess. Which story do you think was the fake one? Also, if you enjoyed the episode, hit super thanks if you're on YouTube, or send us some stars if you're on Facebook to show some love and make your comment stand out. Want to go next level? Get early access to upcoming episodes, exclusive members-only content, and much more by joining our YouTube membership or becoming a Patreon supporter. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's waiting there for you. Don't forget to like, share, and catch up on our previous episodes. And now, stay tuned for the next horror episode.